Guys, back for another bench day. Taking it easy on the back and the legs still. You did miss a few training sessions together. I've been pretty frustrated with myself for putting my back out there. It's healing really well, which is good news. But in that time, I got a little bit of coaching. We brushed up my deadlift form. We brushed up my squat form. We did some heavy box squats with the coach since then. So things have been moving along, and I'm going to get you guys back involved. I think what I'd like to do today is chat with you guys a little bit about some of the things that I learned on bench since kind of taking this journey, because bench has been the newest lift for me, and it's the one that's improving the quickest so far. So hopefully some of the things that I learned you guys can take on, and if you're an experienced bencher and you bench really heavy weight and anything I say sounds stupid to you, please throw it down in the comments. Let's have a debate about what makes for a good bench, and I'm sure I'll benefit from that too. So let's have that open conversation in the comments. So I think really I want to talk about probably 4 things just to keep it simple. The first thing I want to cover is arch and how to achieve a good arch. And with that, I'm going to put in foot position. The second thing I would like to chat with you guys about is shoulder position. The third thing would be grip width. And I think the fourth and final one for me would be how to approach pushing the weight off your chest, how to engage the bar once the bar is on your chest and you've gone through the eccentric. I think a lot of people, when you think about a bench press, think about extending the elbow, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, I've learned. So let's get into it. I'm going to get my warm up in, and in between sets, let's chat about some of that stuff. Okay guys, now that we're getting some weight on the bar, let's start talking about our first thing, and I think arch is interesting to approach to begin with. So what I would say about arching that's interesting is once you get a good arch in, it should not make you feel contorted so much as kind of wound up like a spring. So when we use leg drive on the bench press, we've got to place our feet behind our knees. And if we can't place our feet behind our knees, we're going to have a very difficult time engaging the ground. There's an interesting thing that I learned a while ago, just kind of through trial and error with leg drive, and that's that you're not really pushing up, you're pushing back towards that bar. So you almost can think about it like a quad curl, and that's life-changing on bench press. The amount of weight that I can push and how confidently I can push it when leg drive is on point is not even close. And I think anyone that benches regularly and has figured out leg drive would agree with that. You don't want to over-exaggerate that arch position. If you do, you're not going to be able to engage your shoulders very well. You're turning the bench press into an incline. It's not an incline. Obviously, for powerlifting's sake, it's nice to be able to shorten that range of motion, but I don't think it needs to be as exaggerated as some people make it. I think at a certain point, you're just going to lose connection with the ground if you really overarch that back. Same way, if you stay perfectly flat. That's the nice thing if you're a bodybuilder and doing bench, to stay flat, because you're going to get more chest engagement. But for powerlifters, we're trying to move mass. It's not necessarily just about training chest. We'll chat about the next point after this next set. Thing that I think is worth discussing is shoulder position, which I think is really important. Shoulder injuries are a big thing on bench press, especially if people get heavier. You do want to pinch your shoulder blades together. It's 100% true. If you imagine you have an acorn or a piece of popcorn on your shoulder blades, you should be squeezing that guy tight and holding him there the whole time. But what you don't want to do is scrunch up into this position. It's really not good. And the reason for that is it disengages your back. And now, with all your back muscles lengthened, they're not able to stay as tight. And then anything that you're applying from your feet in terms of pressure to try to get the ground pushing the bar with you, you're going to lose it all when it hits all that extended meat in your back. So you want to keep your shoulders down first and then together in that contracted position. And that's going to make a really big difference, I think, for your back position. The other thing that it does is it creates a really nice shelf under your back, which is your first contact with the ground between the bar and you, right? Is between your wrists and the bench. So if you can keep a really solid platform there, your stability becomes really solid. And then your legs obviously create the bottom of that triangle. So we really want to make sure we keep our shoulders in that position. So pinched, down as best as we can. And that down being really important. I think some people might miss that when they go to set up their bench. The next thing on our list is grip width. Now, when I started benching initially, my brain kind of went to, well, where am I comfortable doing a push-up? That's where I'm going to push from. Squat University is a really good resource out there on YouTube if you want to check them out. And one of the things they mention is studies have been showing that if you take the width of your collarbone from insertion to insertion and multiply it by 2, that should be the width of your grip on the bar, where you can create optimal force. Now, obviously, powerlifting is a game where we're trying to reduce ranges of motion as much as we can without doing silly stuff. So sometimes our grip position will change because of that. What I've settled on is going a little bit wider than my push-up position, but where I still feel quite strong and it doesn't feel like my shoulder's being compromised. The other thing that really helped me find a good grip width is thinking about keeping my elbows at a 45 degree to the body, so I'm not over-exaggerating one way or the other. And that's really helping me generate force and get my lats involved, which is really cool. So keep my elbows tucked, but not tucked to my rib cage. They're at a solid 45 degree angle between, if this was 90 degrees, we want to kind of cut that in half, and I think that's a really good spot to grab the bar. Talk about the last thing on our list, and I think it's the most important thing with pushing really heavy weight, is thinking about how to engage the bar. In my personal opinion, the thing that spoke the best to me in terms of how to think about engaging the bar, I imagine like the world is actually upside down. The barbell's on the floor, and I'm pushing away from the bar, pushing my back into the bench, rather than thinking about pushing the bar away from me. And what I think that changes is a few things. I think when I think about engaging the bench press more like a push-up, I get way more back recruitment. And I think that makes a really big difference for stability, and I think it makes a really big, I think it gives you a really big advantage on that first couple of inches coming off the chest until the chest can take over. The extended position at the bottom is the hardest place for your chest to engage. I mean, your chest isn't in a crazy stretch here. It's not like a fly where your wrists are behind your back, but your chest is still extended enough that I think that initial contraction, yeah, it comes from the chest, but I think a good amount of it comes from your lats too. Just being tight, not necessarily that the lats doing the work, but I think keeping that tightness really keeps your shoulder girdle snug and allows your chest to generate force really efficiently. The other thing that I think about immediately off the bat is pushing myself up the bench towards my head with my feet. So this is something we talked about before with leg drive, going this way rather than straight up and down, right? You want to drive your feet almost like you're driving your heels through the floor, trying to skate your feet up in front of you. All the difference in the world. When I'm doing my 5x5s and I've got 185 on the bar now, which is, for me, a really impressive weight compared to where I started. It's not even close to the speed that I get with leg drive if I'm just leaving my heels on the ground and not really thinking about engaging my quads when I go to push the weight up. So I think between those two things, it'll really change your approach, if you haven't considered these things already, to how you engage your body to get that bar moving. And I think it'll get a lot more of your body involved, right? In a perfect world, the bench press mainly taxes your delts, your triceps, and your chest. Not quite in that order. I would say it's probably your delts and chest to begin with, and then the triceps lock out the movement. But there's so much more going on in your body than just those three muscle groups. And I think to push heavy weight, you really have to wrap your mind around how to get the rest of your body involved. So keeping that back tight, and then also really driving with your legs and creating that solid connection with the ground so that you can use the earth to push that bar rather than just relying on musculature to push your back into the bench. I think it makes a big difference. It certainly made a big difference to my lifting. The other interesting lesson outside of those four that we talked about that was really interesting when I got an arch into my bench especially. I got used to benching flat to such a degree that my bar path, once I saw it from the side, was like this and not straight up and down. So what's the downside of that? Well, the downside of that is if your bench is like this, in terms of bar path, you're actually pushing the bar a longer distance. So if you can manage that straight up and down, it's something weird to get used to. It almost feels like a decline press once you have a good arch in, rather than like a flat press if your back was flat. So that's interesting. It was funny to get used to, and I actually needed a coach. One of the great guys here at Good Life, Daniel, watch me from the side and actually record it and point it out to me. I've watched plenty of my own videos and I never thought of it as a problem. And when he brought it up to me, it was really interesting. It definitely makes me more powerful if you think about pushing a little further forward than backwards, right? Very, very curious. Rest times are another interesting thing to think about, especially when you're doing 5x5s because they're really heavy and they suck the air out of you. So, do you wait until you're fully muscularly recovered? Do you wait a particular time, like is a minute the mark? I've noticed for me, where it'll be the most challenging is if I can just get my breath back. So right now I just finished set 3, I have 4 and 5 to go. I'm pretty out of breath. Once I can get my breathing stable to the point where I can hold a conversation without having to take extra breath in the middle of sentences, it's a good place I find to go for that next set. If you find you need a little extra time to recover, I think that's okay. But taking over 3 minutes between sets, whether you're working too hard, your cardio needs help, which I think a lot of us ignore cardio, or you're just milking it. And that's fine. I mean, if you're comfortable with that, that's great. But if you're trying to get optimal performance, I don't think extra long rest is going to be the way to do it. And I don't think pushing while you can't breathe is going to do you much good either. You're not going to be able to keep tension. So even now is when I'm carrying out the sentence, we're about a minute in, and I'm starting to feel better. So in about 45-30 seconds, I'm probably going to do my next set. I'm really happy to see with how the bench has grown. I mean, it was my worst lift by far. It's becoming one of my better lifts that I can gauge intensity in really well, a lift that I recover well from, which might change as the week gets heavier. But I mean, right now, so we started this 5-week program with what was all of our numbers for the 4 weeks. It was based on our 1RM, getting our 5RM, and then going, 5 rep max. using the 1 rep max to get the 5 rep max. So about 90 or 85% will get you that. And starting at 85%, going to 90, 95, and 100. This is getting to the end of week 2. We started at 155. We should have been at 165 this week, but it's improved so much that I pushed 225 comfortably. I mean, it was a grind, but it wasn't messy, I don't think. And we're doing 185 on the 5x5 now, which should have been a week 4 weight. So I look forward to next week's and seeing if I can get 195 on the bar and trying a 5x5 there and seeing how it goes. I'm not sure I'm fully recovered from my last bench day today. Feeling a little bit of my triceps now, especially after set 4. But it's getting up. The 5th rep is a grind. I think that's a good thing. It means we're pretty close to RPE 8 or 9. We'll get our last set in and get to our accessories.